Before the final bell rang, Musa was already packing up. He never stayed for football. Never joined the boys for bean cake by the gate. While others laughed in small clusters, he slipped through the back fence, with a faded rice sack on his shoulder, eyes low and feet quick. Some called him Musa Dirty. Others just wrinkled their noses when he passed. His uniform always had the color of river sand. And his shoes, if you could call them that, were more whole than soul. On days when the sun roasted the earth like yam on charcoal, you could still find Musa combing through gutters, hunting for treasures no one else wanted. Why does he always carry a sack? Maybe he is a little mad. If our school bin is stolen, I will suspect him first. Musa never answered. Not when they hid his books. Not when they dropped banana peels into his water bottle. Not even when someone drew a rat beside his name on the blackboard. He just kept walking, head bowed, sack slung over his shoulder like it held treasure. But Miss Tenney noticed. He always did. She was the type of teacher who remembered, who forgot lunch, and who hadn't smiled in weeks. She noticed how Musa's eyes darted out the window during lessons. How his fingers trembled when he was called to the front. How his stomach sometimes growled louder than the school bell. She watched him from her second-floor window. How he picked discarded bottles from the gutter. How he crouched behind the market fence and lifted half-eaten gala wrappers like they were gold. At first she thought it was odd. Then she worried. One Thursday when the clouds were heavy and the air smelt of dust and coming rain, she decided to follow him. She told the other teachers she had errands, removed her heels, changed into slippers, wrapped her scarf tight, and walked. She trailed behind him, just far enough. Musa walked past the Okada Junction, across the wooden bridge that creaked with every step, and into the outskirts of the village, where the houses wore rust like old armor, and the ground was a carpet of broken glass and weeds. He didn't stop to play, didn't knock on doors. He just kept going, sack swinging, until he reached a mud house at the edge of a bush path. One room, no windows, roof patched with old cement bags. She crouched behind a mango tree, held her breath. Her heart thumped. Her throat felt tight. Then something happened that made Miss Tenney cover her mouth with her hand. A child's voice called out, "Brother Musa, is that you?" And from inside another, smaller, thinner, added, "What did you bring today?" The door opened. 3 tiny faces peered out, eyes bright with hunger and hope. A frail woman sat just behind them, her eyes cloudy with blindness, her hands trembling as she felt for the wall. Musa knelt, opened the sack, and began to take out his trash. Half a loaf of bread, a plastic bag with leftover rice, 2 bottles of clean water, 3 cracked but usable spoons, a banana too soft for the market, a biscuit still in its torn wrapper. "It's not trash," he whispered. "It's food." He handed a spoon to his blind grandmother first, then his siblings. They clapped. They smiled. They ate like royalty at a feast. Miss Tenney turned away. The tears had already come. She wiped them with her scarf, then peeked again. Musa sat on the floor, back resting on the wall, eating the smallest portion. He listened to their chatter. Stories about school they didn't attend, games they made up with stones and bottle caps. He smiled, a tired, slow smile. Then the rain began. The roof held for only a few minutes, before water trickled through the patched holes. Musa jumped up, grabbed a torn tarpaulin, and held it over his grandmother. The children huddled together. From her hiding place, Miss Tenney felt something break in her. How long had this been happening? How had no one known? She stood heart-heavy and walked away quietly through the rain, her slippers soaking, her mind racing. That night she didn't sleep. She sat with her thoughts, with the image of Musa, shielding his family, with nothing but a smile, and a rice sack. Tomorrow, she knew, could not be like today. The next morning, the air was thick with humidity. The rain had stopped, but puddles gleamed like broken mirrors on the school grounds. Musa arrived early, as usual, wearing the same washed-out shirt and clutching the same sack. But something felt different. Miss Tenney was already in the staff room, her hands folded around a warm mug of tea that had long gone cold. Her mind was not in the school. It was in that one-room house, with leaking roofs and hungry smiles. She knew she couldn't keep what she saw to herself, but she also knew she had to tread carefully. Children could be cruel. Adults could be worse. First, she went to the headmaster. Mr. Adebayo was a man of routines and rules. He adjusted his glasses, furrowed his brows, listened in silence as she spoke. So you're saying this boy is picking trash because his family is starving? Not trash, she corrected. Survival. He's feeding 4 mouths, with leftovers and discarded things, and he never complains. Mr. Adebayo sighed. This is a government school, Miss Tenney. What do you expect me to do? She stood, her voice firm. Something, anything, even if it starts with a single plate of food. Later that day, she brought Musa aside. Not in front of the class. Not where the eyes of mockery could reach. She knelt to his level, looked into his tired eyes, and simply said, I followed you yesterday. Musa froze. His small chest rose and fell quickly. His fingers tightened around the handle of his sack. I saw everything, she continued. Your siblings. Your grandmother. The food. The rain. All of it. He said nothing. Just looked down. Waiting perhaps for punishment. For scolding. For shame. But then, she pulled something out from her bag. A warm flask. Wrapped in cloth. She opened it. Jollof rice. With real meat. Hot. Fragrant. Steaming. This is for you. Today. Tomorrow we'll talk more. His lips parted. But no words came. Just a soft sound. Like a gasp covered in disbelief. He took the flask. Like it was a sacred object. Then he ran. By the end of the week, small changes began to bloom. Quiet ones. Miss Tenney spoke to a local women's group about the boy and his family. A food vendor agreed to send her leftovers in clean packs. One parent offered to donate old uniforms. But whispers too began to spread. I heard that Musa lives inside a bush. They said a teacher is cooking for him now. What's her concern? Maybe she just wants to score a favor for the PTA. The eyes that once ignored Musa now followed him. Some with curiosity. Some with judgment. Some with pity that stung more than insults. And still, Musa remained silent. Until the day he found his sack missing. It was after school. He had left it behind the classroom. For just a moment. When he returned, it was gone. Panic rose like smoke. His hands trembled. His eyes searched the dusty corners of the compound. Then he saw it. In the toilet pit. Someone had thrown it in. His whole life. Everything he gathered. Floating in filth. He dropped to his knees. Tears rushed to his eyes. For the first time. In front of everyone. Miss Tenney heard the noise. And came running. When she saw him kneeling there. Fists clenched. Body shaking. Her heart cracked open. No child should have to survive this way. She turned to the crowd. Who did this? Who did this? Silence. A few students looked away. Others snickered behind their hands. She pointed at the toilet. Is this funny to you? This is how a family eats. This is how a child protects. The only people he has left. And you treat it like trash. More silence. She helped Musa up, her hands steady on his shoulders. You're not alone anymore. She whispered. Not anymore. Musa didn't speak for 2 days. He still came to school. Still sat in the back. Eyes on his books. Lips sealed. But the sack was gone. He wouldn't carry a new one. Not even when Miss Tenny offered him a clean backpack. With side pockets. And a zip that worked. No need. He said quietly. They'll still laugh. She didn't push. She just nodded. And made sure he had lunch. Every day. But her eyes followed him everywhere. And so did the eyes of the school. Then something unexpected happened. The class prefect, Bemi, the same girl who once dropped her pencil and wouldn't let Musa pick it up, raised her hand during social studies. Ma, she said, can we have a donation box for children who don't have lunch? The class went quiet. Miss Tenny's heart skipped. Why do you ask, Bemi? She looked at Musa, then away. We all eat. But not all of us eat well. The box started the next Monday. A shoebox wrapped in old newspaper. A slit at the top. And a sign that read, help a friend. Give a bite. Students dropped what they could. An orange. A wrapped sweet. A 10 naira note. One boy brought a whole loaf of bread. Even the teachers noticed. Mr. Adebayo came to class one afternoon. With a carton of biscuits. No child should study on an empty stomach. He said simply, setting it on the teacher's desk. But the biggest surprise came a week later. A journalist visited the school to cover another story. She overheard the students during break time and followed the whispers to Miss Tenny. After long talk, a picture was taken, then another, then a visit to the house. Real one. With permission. Musa stood beside his grandmother, while the journalist took photos of the leaking roof, the muddy floor, the children with bright eyes and bare feet. The next week, the story ran. Boy with a sack feeds family with school leftovers. Donations started trickling in, then pouring. A roofing company offered to fix the house. A food bank began sending weekly supplies. A woman from the city promised to pay for Musa's education till university. And through it all, Musa said very little. But his eyes began to rise. He began to sit up straighter in class. He accepted the new backpack, though he still kept the torn rice sack in a corner of his home, like a relic, a reminder. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the school field in gold, Musa stayed back after school. He helped arrange chairs, picked up wrappers, swept the chalk dust. Without being asked, Miss Tenny stood by the window, watching him. You're still here? He asked, smiling. He looked up. Yes, Ma. Why? He shrugged, then said, I don't want anyone else to carry a sack. He nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. That night, the rain came again. But this time, when it hit Musa's roof, it stayed outside. And inside, under the soft glow of a lantern, donated by strangers, for children, and one grandmother, sat around a real meal. Hot, clean, served on proper plates. Musa, no longer just a boy with a sack, smiled. Years passed. Musa finished school. Then university. The scholarship took him further than he ever dreamed. He studied social work. Then community development. His story, once whispered in classrooms, became a light he carried everywhere. One morning, years later, he returned to his old town in a shiny but modest car. The school building had new paint. The windows no longer cracked. Miss Tenny was still there, a little grayer, A little slower, but still the same heart. "Ma," he said, stepping into her office, with flowers in one hand and a document in the other. She looked up, eyes wide, then filled with tears. "Musa." He smiled. "You once fed me, believed in me, showed me dignity when I had none. Let me do the same." The paper was a grant, a fund Musa had created in her name, the Teni Foundation for Dignity and Learning, supporting students from poor backgrounds. Every year, a child with a silent story like his would get a second chance. Miss Teni didn't speak. She just reached for his hand, held it, and let the tears fall.